In today's video, I'm going to be doing my August wrap-up. I'm going to talk about my lowest rated books first and head on into my highest rated books. The books that I read earlier in the month will be mentioned, but I won't go into them as I've talked extensively about those books in my mid-month wrap-up, which will be linked down below. I'll only be really talking about the books I read in the later half of the month. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. I ended up DNFing this book. It's called Promise Me Heaven by Connie Brockway. I made it to like page 100 and I couldn't go any further than that. I kept having to put this book down because it was not holding my attention at all. I knew I had to call it quits when I felt like I was being forced to read each chapter. It was just a drag. My mindset was like, okay, it's got to get better at some point, right? But it just didn't. It wasn't accessible, like in terms of like old-timey like language, and like I just felt like the characters were just hollow and I guess shallow. I don't know. This story just wasn't going anywhere, so kind of had to DNF it. Moving on to my least favorite book that I finished, and that is One to Watch by Stayman-London. I ended up giving this book 1 star out of 5 stars. Next, we have White Hot Kiss by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is a paranormal urban fantasy and the first book in the Dark Element series. We follow our main character Layla, a half-demon, half-gargoyle who is capable of sucking out the soul of anyone she kisses. She's raised by this clan of warden gargoyles who are described as the good guys charged with protecting ordinary people from the corruption of demons. Since Layla is both of these races, her supposed family doesn't really accept her because she's a half-blood. This rejection leaves her feeling pretty much like she's unwanted. That is, until an upper demon named Roth starts filling her in on her part in the apocalypse. There's a love triangle in this book that I was not a fan of. Layla easily gravitates towards Roth's bad boy persona. It's a double win for her since he's soulless, you know, with him being a demon and everything. She can finally be physical with a guy without worrying about sucking out his soul. I like romances, but this one took away from the plot. I needed more demons, more action. I needed Layla to fight back and not be saved all the time. There's also an obscene amount of slut shaming in here that got on my nerves. It's like, yeah, I get it. Our main character is pure and virginal. No need to hypersexualize the female side characters. This book was a miss for me. I gave this book 2.5 stars out of 5 stars. Next we have 10 Things I Hate About Pinkie by Sandhya Menon. This is the third book in this universe, but you don't have to read these books in order. Each one acts like a standalone. Our main character Pinkie lives under the sharp and disapproving gaze of her mother. One night when something bad happens, her mother is quick to accuse her of being the culprit. Tired of always being perceived as a disappointment, Pinkie blurts out that she has a boyfriend. She assures them that he's nothing like her previous relationships. This guy is someone her parents will like and approve of. The only problem is, said boyfriend doesn't exist. Until she remembers Samir. She contacts him and arranges for him to be her fake boyfriend, but what's in it for him? Well, being that his summer internship fell through and he doesn't want to go home yet, he decides to take up Pinkie's offer for the chance of gaining an internship with her mom's law firm. Pinkie and Samir couldn't be more different. Pinkie is a bit rough around the edges, but also a free spirit. She's a rebel at heart with colorful hair, and she never ever backs down from speaking her mind. She's very passionate in her activism and is very much serious about her various projects to help the community. Samir knows exactly what he wants to do with his life. He makes a to-do list for like nearly everything. His obsession with organization and structure stems from the lack of control he had as a kid with his parents. This is told from both Pinkie and Samir's POV. I appreciated the parents being present and seeing how they each raise their own kids and the result of their parenting. I also want to mention Pinkie's affinity toward the baby possum she rescued. I really enjoyed reading these parts because I love possums. I work with them at the shelter I volunteer at. We call them opos, and their defense mechanisms are so fascinating. When I first encountered an opo playing dead, I thought it was actually dead, but I have to say, when they're keeled over like that, it's much easier to clean their cages. By the way, as soon as the babies are old enough to fend for themselves, they get released back into the wild. Oh my gosh, but the mothers, they can get massive, and I'm so scared to clean their cages because they're so scary looking, but the babies are so cute. I love marsupials. Anyways, back to the book. After a while, the story started to repeat itself, and the story wound up being very predictable. Although the story was really cute and fun, I give this book 3 stars out of 5 stars. Next is The Perils of Pleasure by Julie Ann Long. This is the first book in the Pennyroyal Green series. This is about a woman named Madeline Greenway who rescues a rogue named Colin Eversey from essentially a hanging. The whole book is about them going on a journey together to prove Colin's innocence in a crime that he may or may have not committed. I thought the story was good, but it was too insta-lovey for me, and the whole time they are together, Colin is pining for another woman, and I'm like, really? But I really liked their bickering and banter back and forth. I really liked the writing and the way the story was told, but the ending sort of fell flat in that it was like told in a Scooby-Doo manner, and that the mastermind behind the whole thing just came forward and was like, the reason this happened was because of this. So I was literally being told and not shown. I didn't really like that, so I ended up giving this book 3 stars out of 5 stars. Then we have The Boyfriend Project by Farrah Rochon. I included this book in my mid-month wrap-up. If you want to know my thoughts on this, head on over to that video. I give this book 4 out of 5 stars. Next up is The Kingdom by Jess Rothenberg. This book is also in my mid-month wrap-up. I gave this book 4 stars out of 5 stars. Another book I read was Coyote America, A Natural and Supernatural History by Dan Flores. This book describes the unpleasant relationship between humans and coyotes in North America. Both have been trapped in a war with each other for a long time. Each interaction does not go well for the coyotes. Oh, there's a coyote chancing about over there? Just a sec. Gotta turn on my hostility. Coyotes have a bad rep and a long history of conflict with humans as the government attempts to eradicate all of them with really brutal and inhumane tactics such as shooting and poisoning them. With all their efforts though, the removal of this species is a lot harder than anticipated. This book made me feel really sad and angry with all the cruelty and straight up appalling things done to this misunderstood creature. My favorite parts about this book was when the author explains how the coyotes were able to survive these attacks. These animals have the ability to quickly adapt to changing environments and conditions. Depending on the circumstances, coyotes can run with the pack and be social, or they can break off and go their own way. This is a major advantage because you can work as a team to bring that deer down, or you can scavenge or hunt by yourself, zoning in on much smaller prey such as rodents and the like. Their long childhoods allow them to soak up as much information as possible from their parents before they enter adulthood. Since people were killing coyotes in such large quantities, these ingenious animals responded by increasing their litter size to as many as 19 pups per litter. That's a lot. This is a story of how coyotes resisted total extermination by implementing these really cool biological adaptations. I think it's so important that we learn how to coexist with this extraordinary species. I give this book 4 out of 5 stars. Next up is Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. This is a collection of short stories about the many Nordic tales and lore. I don't know too much about the Norse myths in general, but I felt like these retellings were very imaginative and pretty funny. Each god is self-serving with their own little quirks and schemes. Loki was, of course, my favorite god to read about, but for one of the stories about the immortality and the apples, I'm still confused as to what his motivations were for leading the goddess astray. Was it just him being mischievous? Is that what's happening here? Anyways, Overall, this was a quick read and highly entertaining. I gave this book 4 stars out of 5 stars. Then we have Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This book is featured in my mid-month wrap-up. I gave this book 4.5 stars out of 5 stars. Then we have Splinters of Scarlet by Emily Bain Murphy. I did a whole review on this book. Go check it out if you want to know how amazing this book is. I'll link it down below. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. Lastly is Cleopatra, A Life by Stacy, Schiff. I did not expect this biography to be so good. Schiff does such an incredible job recounting Cleopatra's life. It really blew me away with all its remarkable insights into the ancient world during the time in which Cleopatra lived. I always thought there was just one Cleopatra, but really there's more than one. The one that we all know is Cleopatra the 7th. She became queen of Egypt when she was just 18 years old, ruling from 51 BC to 30 BC. This book dives deep into the 1st century BC during the Hellenistic age, really zeroing in on the city of Alexandria, and we also see what's going on over in Rome. When she ascends to the throne, she does so with her adolescent brother, Ptolemy the 13th, and by the time he's 13 years old, he's over there commandeering an army. Together they rule for a very short time until her younger brother kicks her out of Egypt. So now her story really kicks off as she tries to figure out how to take back her kingdom. I liked how the book points out the paradoxical effect of marrying your sibling to keep the family stable, but really you cannot trust your family at all because they're always scheming and planning ways to kill you, for they could have the power themselves. Cleopatra was able to hold so much power and wealth because she held a tightly controlled economy and she ensured that her people were fed. Rome looked at Cleopatra with scorn, not only because she was extremely independent and authoritative, but primarily because she was the wealthiest person in all of the Mediterranean. She also had the largest and most extensive library, which I thought was cool. In Rome, women didn't have any political or legal rights, so Cleopatra was certainly a shock to them, especially since she entered into relationships with Roman commanders. There's Julius Caesar and then Mark Antony. During this time period, Egypt maintains its autonomy, that is until the death of Cleopatra. Egypt then becomes a province of Rome and a new era is ushered in. Some cool facts. Cleopatra's favorite author was Homer. The city of Alexandria had 400 theaters. You had to make your own TV. There was like nothing else to do but watch live action drama and most likely commit murder. Children who were teething were fed fried mice as a remedy. Alexander the Great is related to Cleopatra. In Rome, togas were made of wool and were highly uncomfortable and impractical but fashionable. This book is filled with so much betrayal and murder. I couldn't put this book down. Cleopatra led a really interesting life and did so many amazing things as queen. Her story is truly a must-read. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. These are the books that I've read this month. Let me know down in the comments which books of these you have read and what were your thoughts on them, or if any of these sound like something you would like to read. Don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing for you won't miss any of my videos. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye!